shown you here. So if you go to e-commerce website like Flipkart.com, let me just bring that up. Okay, I'll just go here. You can copy the window. Flipkart.com. And this is an e-commerce website, one of the biggest in India. Now I can search products, I can order it, right? So if you see here, new customer, it says sign up. So when I click on sign up, it asks me to go with mobile number. Okay. But let me go Lazada. Login. See here, Facebook or Google. So this is what I'm talking about. I think Flipkart used to also offer something similar. So if I go back here, sign in. Okay, they have changed a bit. They have integrated more ease with the mobile numbers in India, but this is a simple example that I was talking about. Log in with Facebook or Google. Or click on sign up and log in with your own credentials with which you have registered. See here, there's a button that says register here. So this is what we're talking about when we say B2C. Now, the purpose clearly here is to support customer transactions through the customized applications which are built by the service provider. For example, that application can be Grab, that application can be your Money Smart, whatever application names I'm giving you here now, all are from Singapore. Lazada, so all these are few Southeast Asian countries are covered with these applications. Give me a thumbs up if you understood the basic difference between B2B and B2C. B2B is inviting somebody, B2C is opening it for everybody. Thank you for those thumbs ups. Now, let me also give you one more point. B2B, let me see if I've written it anywhere. Okay, Federation is, I've added it here. I didn't realize that we have it somewhere. We don't need this. So coming back to the screen here, we already discussed about Federation. This is a quick introduction to entitlement management, which I will talk, which is again associated with B2B. Why did I come here? Okay, I wanted to add a point. When we talk about B2B versus B2C, remember this point. B2B is just a feature in Azure Active Directory. B2C is a separate service altogether. B2B doesn't require an active subscription. B2C, it requires an active subscription. It's not allowing me to write. Hold on. Subscription. Example. If I want B2B, I said just go with home, Azure Active Directory, users, invite, external user. This is what I do. But if I want B2C, point number one, you have to go to manage tenants, then click on create new tenant, then click on B2C. Now see here, the B2C option is active for me because I have an existing active subscription in this tenant. But what if I don't have one? Let me show this to you. I'll go back to my personal account. I just saw a message from Vijay. Vijay, are you able to hear me now? He says, is it only me who can't hear? Mine good, says Ahmed. Yeah, thanks for the confirmation.
Sorry, that was my network.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, if you see here, guys, what I've done, I've logged into my personal account and I've switched to a directory called December something, December 104. Okay. Now, if you see this directory, it doesn't have any active subscriptions. How I know? If I search for new subscriptions, you will see you can't have any new subscriptions. Okay, it makes sense. So, can I go to Azure Active Directory? Yep. Because we said Azure Active Directory can have multiple subscriptions. In this scenario, it doesn't have any subscriptions. Now, if I go to Manage Tenants, check this out. The B2C option is grayed out. This is the point that I was talking about. Why is it grayed out? Because you don't have any active subscription. B2C is a separate service altogether. Like virtual machine is an infrastructure as a service, B2C is a separate service associated with external identity management. Now, for B2C, you must have an active subscription. Without that, you can't create one. Give me a thumbs up if you're following me. B2B is not a separate service. It's just a feature of Azure Active Directory which allows you to go ahead and invite external parties to access your resources in a secure fashion.
I'm sorry, Habib, but I'm not quite get what is the difference between B2B and B2C. And basically, can you just repeat in layman term again? I'm sorry, Habib.
No worries. So coming back to the whiteboard, as you can see here, B2B, business to business, the term generally comes into play whenever we talk about establishing collaboration between two parties. One being your directory, other one being an external directory. Example, here in this diagram, you see two directories. See here, this is directory 1, let's call this as Microsoft MS. This is directory 2, let's call it as Contoso, right? So Louis is part of Contoso. Let me just remove IBM. Okay. Let's say this Active Directory is Microsoft.com, right? This Active Directory is Contoso.com. So if I want to allow a user from Contoso organization to access an application in my environment, I would go with B2B. Does that make sense? So
yes,
I
good.
put the other person to my environment, which is when I've shown you before going for the break, we saw right for the invitation. So when you go and say invite user, can you just give me your personal email ID maybe in the chat box, if that's okay? So what I'll do is I'll just create a new user account. So here, I'm going to home, switch my directory back to my test environment. I'll go to users section. I'll click on create new user. See here, I'm saying invite external user because you don't belong to this domain. I'm inviting you. So let's say whatever your email address is, you provide me that email address. Once you provide it, I'll put it here. I'll just say Ahmed. And then I would say, let's collab. CC, I would say, Mohammed at Microsoft.com. Okay. So let's
maybe you could try with my exact email so that I can try to see it.
Sure. Let me copy it over then. So dhl.com is the email address that I see here.
No, the Gmail one. Yeah, in the chat.
Okay, I haven't received. Okay, now I can see it. So let me copy it over. all I'm saying is, Ahmed, let's collab, CC to this person, user type is guest, invite. What will happen? In a minute's time, you should receive an email, something like this. System administrator invited you to access applications within the organization. Let me know once you have received it. You will see sender, the same name, because it doesn't change. Organization will be same name. Domain will be same. And then the message you will see, let's collab. Okay, I've received, let me see if I've received an email from my corporate because I've marked the CC to that.
Yeah, I got it right now.
Okay, see here. This is the email that you must have received, right?
Correct.
So what will happen now? You just click on that link, accept invitation.
All right. Yeah, click already.
Log in with Microsoft account, which can be a Gmail address as well. Okay. So once you log in, it will come back to this page saying that, hey, there are no applications to show. Because as of now, I've not shared any applications with you yet. Let me know once you see this screen, apps dashboard.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, now if I go back to my portal, if I refresh here, and if I search for Ahmed, I should see your account, and it says guest. And then I've created this via an invitation. Okay, this is B2B. Asrul is asking me, is our current conference can be considered as B2B? Definitely yes. Microsoft has invited you guys who are from different companies to come join this training program. This is B2B, right? This is a more targeted audience. What if I said, hey, rather than targeted audience, I'll just post a link in the LinkedIn channel saying that, hey, on this particular day, there's going to be a solution symposium and anybody can join. That becomes B2C. Does it make sense, Asrul? Now, coming back to Ahmed. Ahmed, is B2B clear? The main purpose of B2B?
Yep, indeed. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Now, let's talk about B2C. So, B2C, like I said, is for any public application that is facing the internet. So, I go new infrared window. The one which I'm talking about was Lazada.sg. So, when you say Lazada.sg, sign in, it gives you two options: sign in or log in with Facebook or Google. What is this Facebook and Google? These are third party identity providers. What will happen when I say log in with Google? This application Lazada might have added this Google as an identity provider in their application code, and they can fetch the information like username, location, then address. All this information can be fetched. Are you following me? So that's the main purpose. But what happens when you click on register? The moment you click on register, it's going to ask you for the phone number, give me a password, give me an year, give me your name, and just click on sign up. That will create a profile for you, which means a profile exists in a repository. What does that mean? That's where I've just told you guys that, hey, when we are talking about B2C, it's a separate service altogether. This point here. It's a separate service altogether. It requires a subscription. What will happen with B2C? All accounts reside in a dedicated repository. Whatever accounts that you're creating, whatever account information that you're fetching from third-party identity providers, they reside, which means you will have a separate user repository. What happens in B2B? Invited users stay in same Azure Active Directory. So to emphasize on this point, check out this diagram that we saw earlier. So what is happening when you are inviting, when this person accepts the invitation, that user object, where is it getting created? Within Microsoft.com domain. That's B2B. Whereas in B2C, it's a separate domain altogether, which means it's going to be a separate user repository altogether. Does that help, Ahmed?
Okay, clear.
Now, just spend next 30 odd seconds just reading these comparison. Okay, I'll just post it in the chat box as well. This give you a little bit more information about the similarities and differences between B2B and B2C.
Actually, I thought that B2B is basically application to application. B2C is end user to that. This is what I thought.
Not necessarily, right? B2B can be a user to an application as well. But you're not wrong. So most of the time when we say application to application, like for example, front end, the back end, rather than going with B2B, we go with something called managed identities, which we will talk in some time. Okay?
And what about when the user registers?
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, the user existing Google or and they want to register. So will it be considered as a B2C or still it will be considered?
Not necessarily, right? There are two ways. For example, let's say you have an in-house application. Let me take you back here. So what I can do, as of now, I can allow people to access my Azure resources who are part of this particular repository. Agree?
Yeah.
So whichever user accounts that you see, it can be a member account, which means you created it locally, or it could be a guest account which you have invited. But wait a minute, can I go third party? Yep, the answer is yes, which means all I have to do is go back to my Azure Active Directory, click on external identities. Where is it? You will find, okay, here, external identities. Then you will click on all identity providers here, Google, Facebook, or any identity provider who supports SAML or WS Federation. For example, it can be Okta, it can be VMware's Workspace ONE. So all these are identity providers which can be integrated. So when I click on Google to add like an identity provider, it asks me, hey, what's your client ID and what's your client secret? So what is this client ID that we are talking about? The application where you want to integrate Google as one of the authenticator, one of the identity provider. I can do that even in Azure Active Directory. Does it make sense?
Yeah, this part I understood. But what if a user registers? So,
see, no matter whether the user registers or whether the user uses Google, in both the scenarios, your user object gets created in your domain. Now the question is whether the domain is a separate one or is it the same one. In B2B, it's going to be the same one as your home Azure Active Directory. Because for B2B, we do not have a separate directory. However, for B2C, we have a separate directory because it is offered to you as a separate service.
Right. So that means you have to add these things into your applications, whether they want to create a separate directory or they want to add the user into the same directory.
Exactly. So when you are integrating your application, you need to decide whether you want to go with B2B or whether you want to go with B2C.
That's true. Yes. Thank you.
Welcome. So the main thing that we all should consider or question is, what's the purpose? If the purpose is to talk about collaboration, wherein we are working with multiple different departments from different organizations to work together on a given project maybe, then we go with B2B, which means we don't need a separate directory, we don't need a separate tenant. But if the purpose is completely different, like, hey, I want this directory to be dedicated to a given application, then you go with B2C. The whole and sole responsibility of that is to manage identities, whoever is accessing for that particular application. Okay, so let's get back. So that was about B2B and B2C. Let's quickly talk about conditional access policies. I'll just give you a simple example how conditional access policies can be used to enforce MFA. I'll show it to you in practice. Then we will quickly talk about the components of conditional access policies. Then we go forward. Excuse me. So as of now, if you see this, if I sign out here, if I close that and open up a new tab again, go to portal.azure.com. The first question it will ask me is, who do you want to log in as? I'll say system administrator because it has cached my credentials. It should automatically pick up the password and help me log in. So, how many factors have I used for authentication here, guys? One or many? You tell me. I'll launch the browser, portal.azure.com, then it asks for credentials. I provided the credentials. Is this called as single factor or is it called as multi-factor?
I think single factor because you don't have any other second factor authentication.
Single, that's correct. So let's go here to Azure Active Directory. Go to the section security. Go to the section conditional access. Go to the section create new policy. Okay, but before that, let me just create a user. So let me pick up a user. Let's say I want to go with an existing user, that way we'll save time. Ajay. So user principal name, let's copy it. Let me log in as Ajay. Portal.azure.com. Which account do you want to log in as? I'll say I want to log in as Ajay. What's the password? I hope I remember the password. Okay, do you want to stay signed in? I'm saying no. And then again, single authentication. So single factor. So Ajay's account is working without multi-factor authentication. So what I want to do is, if I want to enforce multi-factor authentication, I can do it via conditional access. To do this, I went to Home, Azure Active Directory. Under Azure Active Directory, click on Security, go to Conditional Access, click Create New Policy.
That's a premium feature, isn't it?
Sorry?
The conditional access is a premium feature. It's not available to the basic.
Yeah, it's not available to the basics. Now again, we did discuss this. So if you go back whiteboard.
Yeah, I do. I was just double checking. So.
I'm just going to highlight that. So conditional access. See here? This is the feature that we're talking about. It's available to you only when you have P1 or a P2 license. Okay? So MFA Arun is the name. Assignment, hey, to which user is this rule being applied to? I'm just selecting that user. I'll select for Arun.
I think Ajay, right?
Ajay, sorry. Thanks. I'm saying, hey, what happened to this guy? Okay, I don't know why Arun came into play. Ajay, okay, we have included the user. Now it is asking me for which resource do you want to configure. I can say all cloud applications, which means all those applications where Azure Active Directory is the authenticator. I can go with this. But I'm saying no, I want to specifically have MFA configured for portal.azure.com. We call that as management. So search with the keyword management. We have Microsoft Azure Management. This is portal.azure.com application. Click select. And what conditions do you want to specify? I can look into user risks. I can look into sign-in risk. I can decide if, I can implement these rules if the user is logging in from a particular device platform like Android, iOS, Windows, etc. Right? I can decide whether he is logging in from a different location client applications, filter for devices. So all these conditions can be considered. As of now, I'm not doing anything to make it simple, right? So I'm saying grant, whether you want to grant access or not. I'm saying grant access, but just check this box, require multi-factor authentication. Select it. Session is to basically control the behavior of user controls. So I'm not configuring any of this. Because of the time constraint, I'm not talking about you this. But all this is discussed in a training program called AZ-305. But for now, just remember, session is to limit the user experience. You can use conditional access app control through the integration of, Microsoft Defender. Sign-in frequency, you can decide, hey, if the user has signed in once and if I've cached the credentials, after how many days should I prompt the user to re-log in? You can control that. So all these kind of settings are available to you. I'm not defining anything. I want the policy to be on, and then I'm creating the policy. So what will happen now? The policy called MFA Agile gets created. Okay, created. Now let's test it. To test that policy, I'm going to go back to this screen here, and I'm going to sign out the user, and then sign in back using the same account. If multi-factor authentication was not set up in the past, Ajay will be prompted with a screenshot which says the organization requires more information. Okay. If the account is already configured with MFA, maybe by a telephone number or by an authenticator app, you can view it. How do I check whether it's been configured or not? Go to mysignins.microsoft.com/security info. So log in with Ajay's account. So here, mysignins.microsoft.com/security info. Here, you can see if MFA is configured or not for that particular user. Let it load. It should show my authenticator app. See here, it's sending out an authenticator app request. All I have to do is just approve the request, enter the number, and get access. This confirms that I've set up MFA for this user in the past. So you can see the telephone number or the authenticator app on this particular screen. There are multiple different authentication methods which we support. For example, I can use FIDO2 security key. I can use Windows Hello for Business. Here, Microsoft Authenticator app running on iPhone 12 Pro Max is available. I can add another signing method. So this is where I can add a telephone number. If I say add number, it will ask me which country, code, which number. I'm not going to add it. So now going back here, what I'm doing, I'm signing in to portal.azure.com. So if you see here, after giving password, what is it saying? Approve sign-in request. This is the second factor. To approve, I have to punch in that number, say yes, and I'm good to go. So the first factor was the username. The second factor was the authenticator app. So this is where MFA comes into play. So what if I go back and I disable MFA? So I will go back to policies here. Then go back to policies on MFA Agile. And then I will turn on the policy. Click Save. Go back to the in-private window. Click on Sign Out. They're being signed out. Now I want to relog in. I'm relogging in. Password. See here, directly they want to stay signed in. Something went wrong. Sign in. Let's just try that one more time. Portal.azure.com. No, still sending it to the authenticator app, which means it has not yet considered to be effective. Okay, hold on. Let's just give it refresh here. Just to confirm that the policy Ajay is off. Yep, it's off. Let's try our luck one more time. Portal.azure.com. Hey, yes. It's automatically taking to Ajay. Okay, it's working now. So I'll just click sign out. I'll just say forget Ajay. Close the window. Go back to portal.azure.com. Log in as Ajay now. Sign in, I say no. And there you go. Once the policy is off, you saw, I'm back to a single factor authentication. Now let's talk a little bit more on what is conditional access policy. So conditional access policy is a tool which uses something called signals to make decisions and enforce organization policies. What do you mean by signal? A signal can be a user or a group. A signal can be a device. A signal can be an IP location. So in simple terms, conditional access policy is like if-then statement. If this condition is met, then grant access only when this is done. Remember, there were multiple different rules available. One of the rules that I selected was multi-factor authentication. So that's what it does. What are the components of conditional access policy? This is a screenshot which you saw. First thing, when you go home, fidelity here is your Azure Active Directory. So fidelity here is your Azure Active Directory. From Azure Active Directory, you go to security. Then you go to conditional access policy. Then you say new. The first thing it will ask is the name. Darren is the user for whom you are configuring MFA. Assignments. The who factor. For whom do you want to configure this policy for? This is where we are talking about, hey, this is for the user called Darren. This can be an application as well. For which application do you want to include this policy for? This is where we have selected Azure Portal. And then what actions do you want to specify? So this is where we said we will consider the conditions, which can be a sign-in list, which could be a device platform, which could be a location, or which could be a device state itself. Controls, allow or block. Allow only with MFA, block to limit the user experiences. We have something called sessions. Example, the signing frequency. Always make sure that the policy is on. Just give me a thumbs up if you are following me so far. I told you that I use CAP to enforce multi-factor authentication. But Habib, without CAP, can I use MFA? The answer is yes. How do I do that? I'll just show you that, then we will go forward with the next topic. So I'm going back to home, and then I search for MFA. And then click on multi-factor authentication, and then click on install cloud-based multi-factor authentication setting. So when I do this, it will tell me, hey, how do you want to enable MFA? Which authentication methods available? See here, allow users to create application password to sign into a non-browser application. That's what we are saying. If you have all the applications, then you can create an app password. If you want to trust a particular CIDR value as the trusted IP addresses, you can add those CIDR values here. These are the verification options which are available for MFA. I can send a text message to phone number, notification through the mobile app, which is Authenticator, and verification code from mobile app. All these are the different methods available. Okay. After how many days should I force the user to type in the password? 90 days. For which user do you want to enable MFA? So you just go to user section, you select Ajay, and then you say enable MFA. So enabling multi-factor authentication, that's done. So if you remember, conditional access policy is off, but I've enabled MFA through MFA option. So if the user haven't registered for MFA, he can skip registration for 14 days. After 14 days, it will be enforced. Okay. So now that I've enabled, let's test it. So let's go back to Introvert window, portals.azure.com. See here, it is asking me for multi-factor authentication because it has cached the credentials from the last login. If I type this in, it will work. I think the last session is still open. Yeah, because of this. Let me sign this out. Let me sign this out here as well. And let's say if MFA is in place, okay? Portal.azure.com. The first thing it will be asking is username. The first factor is the password, so type in the password. The second factor is the authenticator. Type in the code. Just give me a thumbs up, guys. So MFA can be enabled directly as well, but can be enforced through conditional access policy. In large enterprise environments, they always go through conditional access policy. Why? It gives them centralized administrator. It gives them central point of view for all their policies and the CAP, conditional access policies. All good so far, people? Give me a thumbs up if you're following me. Now coming back, like I said, if you want to learn only about Azure Active Directory, so we do delivery for Azure Active Directory for 4 days. Whole 4 days, it's all Azure AD. Go to this training, AZ-305. Okay, so coming back, I've told you that under identity protection, one of the things, so if you go back to the portal, see here, I'm taking your attention back to the portal, home, Azure Active Directory, security. Under security, what do you see? Conditional access. Under conditional access, you have identity protection. So most of the people, they do identity protection, which means user risk policy and sign-in risk policy configuration through conditional access policy. See here, user risk. Which user, what's the level, what control. Sign-in risk. Which user, what level, what control do you want to implement. For sign-in risk, it will be multi-factor authentication. For user risk, it will be reset passwords. Most of the time, the enterprises again uses conditional access to configure the same thing. For example, let me just show it to you. If I go conditional access here, and if I go to conditions, and if I select user risk, see here, if I say yes, like on the other screen, it is asking me for the risk level. So I'll just say hi for high risk level. Then under action, it is going to ask me, hey, what do you want to do? Here, require multi-factor authentication. Or I can say require device to be marked as compliant. Or I can say require Azure hybrid AD join device. So I can bring all these conditions. Give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. So in simple terms, what I'm trying to highlight here is user risks and sign-in risk policies can be configured directly by going to the security section of Azure Active Directory or by just creating a conditional access policy. Both will yield the same response, the same result. Let me pause here. Let me go back. So assigning risk can be a user compromised, anonymous IP address, a location. For example, even if you give me $100 million, I won't go to Afghanistan to work, right? So if you see a login item from Afghanistan, definitely you can block the access because that's not me. User-linked risks are your leaked credentials or Azure threat intelligence reporting something is wrong with the user behavior. So these are the two things which come into play. Now, since Snowden, this has picked up the pace. Like, hey, the leaker is not always external. It can be an internal employee as well. Then we are talking about identity protection, right? Investigating risks, sending out the data that you have collected to SIM solution to automate the remediation tasks. So investigate, analyze, automate. These are the three things which we do. How do I impose best security posture in my enterprise? Perform these 5 steps. Strengthen your credentials, which means under security, you can go to the section password protection and then you can define what should be the password given. So minimum 4 characters. Sorry, minimum 8 characters. All 4 classes must be used. And then threat response automation, which means user risk policies and sign risk policies must be considered to take action immediately. Auditing and monitoring, which is to protect your identities and Azure Active Directory through a solution called Azure Monitor. Reduce your attack surface area so that tomorrow when a particular segment of the network is affected, the attacker is just limited to within that particular section. So segmentation in networks is one of the best examples of reducing your attack surface area. And then self-help. This is the place where we talk about SSPR and access reviews. I'm just going to pause here for 20 seconds, check out the points here, and let me know if you have any questions, guys. Thank you. Let's get going. Then the last section for today is, last but one section I should say, is identity governance. So whenever we talk about identity governance, there are so many things. Privileged identity management, what does it do? In simple terms, we don't want everybody to be administrator. Whoever is administrator, they need to justify that they need these permissions. So that's PIM. Entitlement management. Remember this morning we invited a user from external party to access your resources. I told you when the project is over, it is your responsibility to delete that user account. The question is, can I automate that deletion? Rather than me deleting it, when the project is over, the user account must be deleted automatically. Entitlement management. So in entitlement management, we look into factors like which user or a group, what resources that needs to be accessed, and for how long. So basically, you're defining a policy which defines these rules, and after that, policy is expired, the access is lost, and then the data will be deleted. On the other side, we also have access reviews, which is all about starting with 0, going back to 0, which means anything that starts must have an end. That's the concept with your access reviews. So that's exactly what we have. Okay. Access reviews confirm that the requested person who's using an administrative privilege is a must. So these are the kind of questions that we answer with your access reviews. So in access review, the first step is to create an access package, and then the last step is to go fine. So this is where I'm going to pause, check out the points, and let me know. Monitoring and auditing, you can rely on Azure Monitor or the monitoring section of Azure Active Directory. Both options are available to you. Just give me a thumbs up if you're following me so far. PIM is Privileged Identity Management, which means not everybody can be an administrator. Access reviews is to confirm that the right party has the right resource. This is where we also offer group memberships, access to enterprise applications or role assignment checking. And then I see no questions in the chat. Let's jump into the last leg, which is basically I've shown you this morning how to register an application. I've told you when you register an application, you get something called application object and you get something called service principal. Service principal is per tenant, which means if you have shared the application across 2 tenants, you will see service principal being created at 2 tenants. Okay, so that's the first important point that I want you to understand. We have item, we have service application, and then we have service principal object called HR app, all residing in the same place. Okay, so what we are trying to highlight here is you decide how the data in the storage is getting encrypted. Do you want to use your own personal keys or do you want to use LLM keys? Then the second point that I would consider to remember here is the service principal, which basically represents your local application deployments. So how many service principals will I see if the application is being shared across 4 tenants? You'll see 4, provided all applications are successfully registered with the application object. So let me just show you how application object versus let me just show you quickly how it really works. So I'm going back to home. I'm going back to Azure Active Directory. I'm going back to Enterprise Application Registrations. I'm clicking on existing relationship here. So I'm just going to click on a demo app, which has already been there. So check out the points. I'm just going to capture this screenshot, okay? And I'm going to keep it aside. So the first thing that we see is the client ID is nothing but the object ID that we have discussed about. And then this will be unique. And it will be same object ID and the client ID that you will see for all the tenants where this application is being shared. For example, to see the service principal object, we will go back here, home, Contoso, enterprise applications. And then you will see the same thing. Look at the options here, they are different. So service principal is the local representation of your application and global representation is your application object itself. If the application is being shared across multiple tenants, you will have the same object ID everywhere for your global application. However, the object ID for your service principal object changes. Check this out. Application ID 33070B92. 33070B92. And then object ID. It's starting with 0A19 and ends with 9D. 0A19 is not even to be seen. So everybody following me so far? Give me a thumbs up. So check out the responsibilities as well. Service principal object versus your global application object. Who's managing your secrets? Who's managing branding properties? Who's managing API permissions? That's all done by your front end, which is your global object of your application. But who's doing the groundwork, like users and group single sign-on, provisioning, application proxy? That's being done by your service principal. Thanks for those thumbs ups. Let's get back to the whiteboard here. So here, a service principal will have one to many, whereas application object will have one to one. And then this is what we said. The application object is the global representation of your app. The client ID will be same across all tenants. Whereas here, application ID or the client ID, which is nothing but local representation of that app in that specific tenant. So these are the things which we want you to learn for day 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up 2 slides from our deck and add it to our whiteboard. This is about managed identity. So what a managed identity is? Identity which is managed by Microsoft, which allows resource A to communicate with resource B. That's it. That's the simplest definition. Yeah. Mm. Everybody following me so far? So managed identity, like I said, it's basically an identity between resource A and resource B. The resource A can be a virtual machine, the resource B can be a database. The resource A can be an app service, resource B can be a key vault, resource A can be a logic app, resource B can be your application itself. So you can do all of this through managed identities. Why should I go with managed identity? Because the source is Azure, the target supports Azure AD authentication, Azure RBAC, and no credential rotation or certificate management required for your Azure Active Directory. Also, few examples. Within managed identities, you have something called system-based identity versus user-based identity, user-managed identity. System is basically created by the resource itself. For example, while creating a virtual machine, it will ask you, do you want a managed identity? See here. I go back to the portal. And then I say home. Virtual machines. Click on this virtual machine here, for example. We're talking about while creating, right? So by that. And here, it will ask you. So here, enable system assigned managed identity. If you click on the I symbol, it clearly tells you the reason what is system assigned managed identity. You scroll down. And to use which one is all highlighted to you here. You have to consider multiple factors to decide which region you're choosing for your data center. Hope this helps. Coming back to the whiteboard. Now what all things are common and what are uncommon is what you see. Okay, that should be it, guys.